Well, hello everybody. This is Nick Chavez and Martin Valko coming to you live from. I'm at home and Nick is in our Fort Worth office. This is our weekly wrap up. Um, there are a few things that we wanted to talk about, and one is really, really important for the citizens of Ukraine. We'll talk about the TPS program that was just announced, the designation. A couple of other things, State of the Union. Um, Please like the show, subscribe to our channel. In the comments below, you can find various social media links. Again, pass it on to your friends, or you can tag them in comments so they can watch it later. And feel free to send us the questions during the show. Typically, this is a wrap-up show where we just wanted to go over what took place, what transpired in the world of immigration law this week. But you can also send us questions for next week's show in an email or in the comments or in the direct messages as you have done in the past. Nick, how's it going?
I'm doing good, my man. I'm glad to be here. This warm spring day. Is it spring yet? Spring's March 20th, I think.
Is it? I don't know.
March 20th, I think. It's always later. I'm not looking forward to the spring forward where we lose an hour.
Yeah, it's coming up. Yeah, I like the falling backwards. I always do, but springing
yes.
springing forward.
I love to fall back. Yes.
Yeah. So you've done a show this week on I believe on Wednesday in Spanish with Christina, and basically just kind of went over things of the of kind of what was happening, breaking news, answering questions. We also have a weekly employment-based or business immigration show that is generally handled by Ben Hamilton and Andrew Craven. And so, at the end, as I mentioned, we'd like to wrap up on Friday to see what took place. And last Friday, we discussed what could the administration do for the people of Ukraine that are facing this unprecedented, incredible thing. They are in a war. They're being attacked by their neighbor Russia, and lots of people. I believe it's up to 1 million citizens that had fled Ukraine so far to neighboring countries, Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, Romania, are probably the top receivers of the refugees. And so we talked about what could the Department of Homeland Security, the administration, come up with. And one of the topics we discussed was the TPS, the temporary protected status. It is here. It was announced yesterday that as of March 1st, 2022, citizens or nationals of Ukraine that were physically present in the U.S. So again, those people that are that want to apply for TPS would have to be present, have a physical presence established and residence established in the U.S. on March 1st of this year, and it will be an 18-month designation. So, what do you think about this announcement, Nick?
Yeah, it was great. Last week, we were talking about that. We were talking about the hashtag movements and all the pressure on the U.S. government to do this, and which is essentially the right thing to do. We're hoping that they would get some protections, and really the benefit is think about it. It's a good thing to do humanitarian wise. There's 30,000 estimated Ukrainians that are living here or studying, and this would be beneficial to them. And I'll talk a little bit about what TPS and what that means in more of a broader scale, because TPS is not only for Ukrainians, but it could be for other nationals of various different countries. Interestingly, and I'll read a quote from Mayorkas. Mayorkas is the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security. and which basically led to TPS. He stated that Russia's premeditated and unprovoked attack on Ukraine has resulted in ongoing war, senseless violence, and Ukrainians to seek refuge in other countries. And so based on that, based on these extraordinary circumstances, the Department of Homeland Security offered support and protection to Ukrainian nationals. And I mentioned Mayorkas because the important part of TPS is the designation, the Department of Homeland Security, not necessarily the president, the DHS, Department of Homeland Security. They're the ones that designate the country first. And we've seen TPS in other situations. We've heard already El Salvador, Honduras, Haiti, Venezuela recently with the situation there with President Maduro. So TPS, what is it? TPS is basically a protection that's granted to nationals of certain countries who are returning, who can't return back to their home country because of armed conflict, environmental disasters, or other extraordinary circumstances. And notice I said can't return, because it only benefits those who are currently here in the United States. As you mentioned, Mart, it gives benefits. It's a legal status, and it gives the person the opportunity to work and travel. But one of the main requirements is that the person show that they were physically here when the country was designated. There are other requirements. You have to file your application on time. So basically what happens is that the government will notify the public, and that information is not available right now. We had the announcement yesterday, but we will be seeing in the near future some information about when and how and where to file the application for TPS. And you have to show that you file it prior to the expiration of the registration period. So they're going to give you some dates. That you also have to show that you continuously were present here in the United States since the date that the country was designated. Also, very important, you cannot have a felony. So if you have a felony conviction, you are ineligible for TPS. 2 or more misdemeanors as well could disqualify you. And there are some other requirements, but in a nutshell, that's what TPS, and that's who it protects. And we've seen other countries, other nationals from different countries who are currently here in the United States, some longer than others, that have enjoyed this important protection. They've been here already for some of them longer than 20 years. And they have their families here. They're what we know them as entrepreneurs. They have family ties. Some go to the military. So this is a very important protection.
Yeah, and I also wanted to point out that you may have somebody who's in status such as students as international students in an F1 status, and it might be advisable that they change status from F1 to TPS, for example. So this is supposed to be an 18-month designation to begin with, and we'll see, if it's going to be extended. So historically, there have been several countries that were designated to TPS countries that have had the designation extended. I mean, I can think of El Salvador, for example. I mean, we're talking about, I think, going on 20 years now that the extension has been there. El Salvador and Honduras. You mentioned Venezuela most recently. There was also designation and extension for Sudan and South Sudan just recently, I believe this week. But for example, if you're an international student, you are quite restricted in what you can do. You can work on campus. You can only do it up to 20 hours a week, which is part-time. But we've seen it with, for example, Nepalese student when Nepal was designated TPS country, where they were switching from an F1 to TPS so they could apply for a work permit, which generally comes with TPS, which is the employment authorization, and it would allow them to work beyond the 20 hours if they switch to TPS. And it is not authorized stay, for example, like DACA is, but TPS it's its own status. So person will continue to maintain status, and that would be one of the examples that we've seen designees or national weather designated countries do. We also talked about asylum and refugee programs, and nothing has changed since the administration announcement was that they are encouraging refugees, and they're encouraging a refugee program. I don't know, how to take it, because nothing specific was announced. With the past administration, the refugee program had been pretty much dismantled. The numbers, the quotas are, I believe, for this year it was 125,000, or this past year, but only 4,700 or so, under 5,000 refugees have been admitted to the U.S. So the cap is certainly there. The question is going to be, how it's going to be enforced and announced. And so it hasn't really been. There's just been some statements made by I believe, by the spokespeople of the administration, but nothing specific. Obviously, those that are in the U.S. and they could benefit from asylum, for example, then they would be able to apply for asylum. The best thing would be to consult with an experienced immigration attorney to provide you with the guidance. We've heard of people showing up at the southern border or crossing illegally or without authorization, and then applying for asylum. So it is, before doing anything like this, or if somebody has certain plans, the best thing would be to consult with an attorney, so immigration attorney, so they would know what the steps would be to take. There was also humanitarian parole, which is in place, which exists now, and people could apply. It's basically done through an application to the USCIS. It takes several months, and recently we've seen that program being put to test with refugees from Afghanistan, and we have, I think, several dozens still pending with the USCIS. But so far, what we've heard from colleagues was that the approval numbers were pretty low for the humanitarian parole. And again, this is something temporary. It's a parole where, if approved, the person is allowed to come in, is paroled into the U.S., can apply for a work permit, and then potentially could extend that parole. There's also, and we're getting emails and getting some queries about what to do for those that would like to come in and would like to apply for a visa. And there's been some diversion. Obviously, the U.S. consulate is not functioning in Kiev or in Ukraine, and most of the processing has moved over to Poland. We're also hearing some anecdotal evidence, stories of people applying for visas, submitting a different classification. So if you go to particular posts, you may not be able to get an visa appointment for a tourist visa, for example, for visitor's visa. Some countries will show 999 days, which means it's unavailable, also because of the COVID delays and backlogs. But we're hearing that some are able to choose different classification. It may be a different types of, not necessarily a tourist visa, but a different non-immigrant classification, and then request an expedited processing, and then they should be able to change it or explain it at the appointment itself, and hopefully get a visa. So again, there's just so many different things that person has to follow, and in order to apply for a visa, you have to show whether you qualify, and it is up to the discretion of the consular officer whether you would be granted the type of visa. But what we've heard, again, from anecdotal evidence, is that people are applying for different types than, for example, a tourist visa, and they are able to expedite it and actually get the visa. So that's one way of getting into the U.S. And then maybe changing status if that's what's in store, or applying for different benefit if that's possible. So that's basically on TPS. We've mentioned the Sudanese and South Sudanese designation as well. That was an extension for another 18 months through November 3rd of 2023. So anything else, Nick, you would like to add on this topic?
Well, I think the government has a lot of tools in its toolbox to help. And it just depends on your situation. If you are currently here, you have TPS as a possible option if your country has been designated. And for those who are outside, if you don't have a visa, we could certainly look into the parole, the humanitarian parole, which you mentioned. I do have a question, and it's from Juan Rodriguez. And Juan Rodriguez, thank you for listening. And it's, why is it 18 months? Well, because number one, if you remember that temporary protected status is exactly what it says. It's temporary. So they're going to have to limit it. Usually it's 18 months. That's the intervals that or the periods that they issue work authorization or TPS. And then before that expires, they'll make an announcement if they're going to go ahead and extend it or not.
If you recall, under the past Trump administration, they were looking into canceling all of the existing TPS designations, and literally came to the tail end of the designation when just overnight they just said, okay, we're going to extend it. Do you recall that? And people were just up in arms, and literally they were freaking out. They just didn't know what's going to happen. And some of them, like I said, some of the designations lasted 10, 12, 15, 20 years, and their work authorization would lapse, they would lose their job, and so everything is connected to it. So thankfully it nothing really lapsed, and everything got extended. So we wished for TPS on Friday, and we got it. We got it yesterday. So hopefully maybe we can wish for something else today and get it next week, or weeks to come. Some type of sensible immigration reform would be nice. So if we wish really hard, Nick, maybe we can.
Well, we can come up with our own chant. Back then, the Native Americans, you would have this rain dance. We can focus and work on an immigration dance. Maybe Juan Rodriguez, if you're here, maybe you can help us with that. Maybe.
And if you would like to see Nick dance in a second when the light goes off and he's going to have to move,
I'm going to have to get a
motion detector.
That's one thing. Is we'll dance, but then you're going to have a cutoff here, and you're going to have somebody else's. We'll have Joe's. We can superimpose Joe's face on it.
El grito.
Oh yeah, well Juan said el grito. Yeah, well that we can incorporate el grito to that for sure. That nothing is better than a good old grito, huh? All right. Okay, so do you want to talk a little bit about there's also some news on H-1Bs, and I don't practice in the H-1B world. Martin and our team, Ben and Andrew, we have our own section dedicated to handling those. But what's up with H-1B?
Well, there was just an announcement that the official cap for 2022 was closed, that the numbers have been reached. It's just kind of anybody's guess. Did it really reach it? There's always been this contention that perhaps the government is not filling all of the spots available, and it is probably in the professional world, professional workers, the most coveted visa classification, non-immigrant classification, which is the H-1B specialty occupation program. So at the very least, it requires the equivalent of a U.S. bachelor's degree or higher, more advanced degree. Historically, for the last, I want to say 8 or 9 or 10 years, there's been a lottery because the demand is really high, and I think we were close to 300,000 last year for 65,000 with bachelor's degree, and then there's additional 20,000 spots for people with advanced degree, so anything higher than that. And so people had 1 in 4, 1 in 5 chances of being selected. And so this past year, for the fiscal year 2022, there were 3 drawings, and we were expecting that perhaps there's going to be a 4th drawing, but it didn't happen. And so the cap closed, fiscal year closed on February 28th. And so people that did not get selected means that they didn't get selected. There are certain institutions that are exempt. So for example, if you have a university that wants to hire you as a professor, or at a position at a university, or at a high school that is connected to an institution of higher learning, then those positions are exempt from this annual cap. And so they could be petitioned for throughout the year without really regarding on whether what is the status of the cap. There was also a class action lawsuit that was filed against the registration process. So the Trump administration, right on the tail end, brought in this new registration process where it basically divided the H-1B process into 2 steps. The first one is registering for a fee of $10 with the Department of Labor. So an employer would register the prospective employee. And so the entry price or entry fee was quite low. It was $10 to register. And so that brought in even more people. And so that's why we got up to 300,000 or close to 300,000 prospective applicants, employees. And so there was a lawsuit that was filed against it, and it was dismissed recently. So it's we're going to continue with this registration. In fact, the registration for fiscal year of 2023 opened up on March 1st, and that is going to continue through noon Eastern time on March 18th. So if you are a recent graduate from a university or a master's program, for example, or you've graduated and you have an OPT or STEM OPT, this is the time to register, to have your employer or prospective employer register, and cross your fingers so you get selected in the lottery. And then if you do and you get approved, then once if you register and you get selected in the lottery, then you basically will have a window to file the actual H-1B petition. And if you get approved, then your status, if you're in the U.S., will change on October 1st, and then you start working as an H-1B employee. So that's the news. Really, again, nothing major. Just that we knew, right? If people were not getting selected, we're just hoping that there might be a 4th round for people that were not selected. We've had some some clients that got selected in the 2nd and 3rd round, and so if there was a chatter that it might be a 4th one, we thought, okay, maybe somebody will get another shot, but that got closed. So we are filing the registrations right now. That's in the full swing on our EB side, and then hoping for the best in the lottery.
Yeah, but there's some positions that you don't need to worry about the lottery, right? There's
that's when you're exempted from the cap, right? So as I said, you may be working for an institution of higher learning. You may be working, for example, local school district has this association. So typically high schools and high school teachers are not eligible. But if they have this association with a university, for example, so the largest local district has this association, and so they are cap exempt, and they don't have to wait for this registration from March 1st through the 18th. They can be sponsored throughout the year.
Cool.
And then what else? I think we discussed the State of the Union that the President Biden, that was his first one, delivered. Was it one Tuesday?
It was on Tuesday. Gosh. as I get older, less brain cells, and so my memory, it's like, wow, it's just all a blur now. But yeah, I think it was Tuesday, the State of the Union, and you and I, we always look at we always hear the State of the Union, right, to figure out, what is the position on immigration, and you could always get a sense of how important an issue is by hearing or watching the State of the Union.
Yeah.
And with immigration, I mean, this whole President Biden speech was a little over an hour, but he only took, what, 2 minutes just to talk about immigration. Of course, it was overshadowed by other issues, like, naturally the pressing issues with Ukraine, and a lot of people are worried about inflation and COVID. But there was some references. He did reference border security. He was talking about how many arrests were made at the border, which, I think they're inflated, but that's a lot of arrests. I think over 1 million or something like that. And he also discussed the need for a pathway for citizenship. But listening to the language is important. Words matter, because you can tell he didn't mention anything about the humanitarian need, the aspect, I should say, the personal aspect of immigration that we are aware of, family ties and all that. He did mention the pathway for citizenship, but he connected that with the economy. He said it's the right thing to do and he's right, for economic sake, it's the right thing to do. And you can tell he's walking this fine line. And just to give you an idea, I mean, there's a lot of people who want to see border security, who are more worried about border security than they are about fixing this immigration system. And I think you can't separate them; they go hand in hand. But Kristen Sinema, and she mentioned something, and I thought it was interesting. But it kind of tells you where we at politically. She mentioned after the speech that as we strengthen, this is a quote, as we strengthen Arizona's economic recovery, the administration must take immediate action to address the ongoing migrant crisis by securing the border, keeping Arizona community safe, and ensuring migrants are treated fairly and humanely. Okay, so you see that there's a tilt toward the border security, economics, or the economy, I should say. And I think that's the administration's pretty mindful of that. And you can tell by the way they're, with the Title 42, it's a health rule. It's a public health rule that's been used to expel many migrants and their families showing up to the border. And they, some of them want to apply for asylum, or I'd say most of them want to apply for asylum, but they're expelled due to COVID concerns. They don't want the spread. So it's been used as an excuse. And that policy was created under the Trump era, but it's being continued with the Biden administration. One good news, we just received it today. It was a federal court in DC had just ruled that the government or immigration officials cannot expel migrants and their families showing up to apply for asylum. They can't expel them if they could be persecuted upon their return. So they're going to have to do a better job at screening individuals who want to apply for asylum. So it's actually a good thing. But all this posturing, Martin, it kind of reminds me of what Obama did in a little bit. I mean, he was trying to show people how strong he was by deporting. There was a record amount of people that he deported under his administration. And I guess he was trying to make it easier to swallow this immigration reform pill. I don't know, or at least to popularize it. What are your thoughts?
Well, certainly Ukraine and the crisis and the war, took most of the time. Mm-hmm. We've seen from the Democrats that they truly want to get things done. They want to get the ball rolling. And I mean, you can see it, 3 attempts with the Senate parliamentarian this past fall, and it looked maybe, the second or third time around it was going to work, and we got shut down. So you can't blame him for the lack of trying. They truly want to get something done. At the same time, when you see that you have the highest numbers of people apprehended at the southern border, sometimes 200,000 a month or so. I mean, those are pretty big numbers. So that that plays into the other side's narrative that, look, we got to do something down there, right? And so I think presidents, those points on border security and his numbers. I mean, I think he was just like you said. He was just trying to tell them that we're trying to get tougher, and we're trying to see what we can do on the border, so that we can look at who is here and what we can do about those people. It's been more than 3 decades that anything comprehensive was done, and as we mentioned many times before, something has to be done. It's just there isn't quite the right balance of power, or I guess priorities for the administration and the parties in power.
Yeah.
And then you have a couple of mavericks. Right now, we have a couple of them. You mentioned Cinema, Manchin. There are almost, Cinema is a Democrat, but she's almost an independent.
Yeah, that was important to emphasize. I forgot to emphasize. Yeah, you have a Democrat talking about.
So exactly. So you are basically, it's like there's this balance of power that it seems like there's always one or two on each side. They're trying to just kind of balance it out, and at the end of the day, it looks like immigrants are losing. And
it's amazing because there was a report, or there was a poll that was done, and I think close to 80% of registered voters, they supported a pathway for citizenship. In other words, immigration reform, and including 76% of those were Republicans. There's overwhelmingly support, and it's amazing that with that support, they can't gain any traction toward passing something. There's always something that the other party doesn't like, right? And so if they can just meet in the middle, right? But a lot of people think that train, that ship has sailed, right? That train has left, because the best possibility to get it done was maybe perhaps doing it through this infrastructure bill. And you mentioned those Plan A, Plan B, Plan C that was presented to the Senate parliamentarian. And it just didn't happen.
And another thing I would just want to mention is, there's just so much hypocrisy on both sides, but really more so on the right side. I've consulted with many prospective clients that, will say I vote Republican, but I have undocumented workers, right? And they'll say just outright,
wink,
wink, and I pay $6,000 to Coyote so they can go home for Christmas and bring him back. And I'm looking at the prospective clients, at the employers. It's just like, are you hearing yourself? I want to be strong, and I want to be tough, and I will have a tough border, but I enjoy my undocumented workforce.
And we have people that you wouldn't typically think they would be supporting immigration reform, but we're talking about people who come in and they look like they come from after filming a movie or something, a cowboy movie or Yellowstone or something. They come in and you're thinking, oh man, but they're owners of businesses or ranches, and they're the ones that tell us, man, we can't find anybody. We need work. And by the way, I like this person. I like Juan. He's a good worker. And so, it's interesting.
Yeah, those people need to speak out, and they need to go to their representatives, and because those are the ones that are voting Republican most of the time, and so they need to speak out, and from the small business owners all the way to the bigger corporations. I mean, we've had our share of clients on the business side where the owners truly do not know that they have undocumented workforce. And I mean, that with our audits that we audit the employers, you could look at 20, 30, 40, sometimes even 50% of workforce is undocumented, and the employer does not know about it because they don't participate in E-Verify, and so they're doing everything, the employment authorization verification through documents, so paper-based. And the system allows for it. So you really can't discriminate. You really can't scrutinize too much these documents that people are presenting. And then all of a sudden you load up and you could have 50, 100 employees that are really not authorized. And so if there is an audit, they get slammed. And so if they really didn't know about it, then they let them go and there's really no punishment. But from the employer's perspective, you just lost half your workforce, right? If it's 50%. And so you are looking into being bankrupt. And so I think it's going to take more of these employers to go after their congressional representatives. And it's really on the right. I mean, most of the time it's on the right because we get a lot of hurdles on the right. And they need to tell them that, hey, we're going to stop supporting you unless there's going to be some type of comprehensive reform or something will be put in place that we can feel comfortable and secure that nobody's going to take away our workforce. But that's reality. That's what we're seeing, and it seems like we always end with this. People are administrations and they're just passing the buck and kicking the can down the road. So. Anyways, it's a wrap up show. We'd like to keep it short, hopefully at 30 minutes or so. Again, if you like the show, like it, click like. We've reached a pretty big milestone this past week. I think we have 500 followers on, I believe that was on YouTube, and we've been growing our audience here on Facebook as well. So that's a big deal for us. So please subscribe or like, depending on the social media here. Just like the show. Tag somebody if you think somebody could benefit from it. Also, if you want to stay in touch with us, or if you'd like to be connected to us and have a peace of mind that somebody's watching out for you. Nick and I are co-founders of a company called Lawpilot, and its app is called Lawpilot GUARDIAN, and it's used by our clients, other people. We've had some employers that offer it to their employees as a benefit, and basically it just connects you or the user to us or a law firm you're working with. And in the event of an emergency, when you press this big red button, we'll get notified. We'll be able to see where you are on the map, and we'll be actually able to listen to see what is being said and who you are speaking with, so we could help if you need our assistance. Plus, it's great for news, any kind of notifications, changes in law, anything that you might be interested in. You'll get it through push notification. And of course, we have a nice library of rights. So if you want to know what to do or what not to do when you're dealing with law enforcement, you have it there as well. So I think you can find a link in the email, or in the link. You have the QR code here on the screen, so you can actually just scan that and you can register with Lawpilot and you'll be connected to us. So with that, I am Martin Valko.
Nick Chavez, is that gonna be our Senate?
I don't know. We're gonna be trying to
do this, or I was thinking Chavez out, or I don't know. Maybe Juan can work on it.
Yeah, and just want to give shout out to Joe. Joe Lopez is our behind the scene guys who make it all happen. So everybody say hello to Joe. Joe, can you show yourself? There's Joe. All right. He didn't know he was going to be called on. So Joe is the man. Thank you, Joe, for everything you're doing.
Anytime.
All right, guys. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you here next week. Take care. Bye-bye.